everyone, and welcome to another installment of Viably's Voices of Collaboration, where we get to sit down and talk more than just shop with some of our trusted partners in the e-commerce ecosystem. Today, I am so excited and absolutely thrilled to be joined by one of our great partners and friends, Yael Cabilly, founder of Fortunet. Yael, thank you so much for joining me today. It's an absolute pleasure, as always, getting to catch up with you.
Yes, thanks for having me. Excited. I was waiting for our meeting. Thank you.
Yes, me as well. So I know we have lots of good things to talk about and we could gab all day, but we'll go ahead and dive into things. I know that you have had a lot of experience across the space, but I always love chatting with our partners and friends about where they got started in e-commerce. I know that everyone has different ways in which they found their wedge into the space. So, Yael, I would love to hear a little bit more about what you were doing before you got started in e-commerce.
Yeah. So I was a trademark lawyer, focusing mostly on intellectual property, patents, trademarks, copyrights. And then, so my journey started on the legal side. It started with one seller who had a legal problem on the trademark side. And then it was like, you're a trademark attorney. I have this problem with someone else that's topping me on Amazon. Help me with that. And then after we helped him, he went back to me and said, I have this group of 1,000 sellers. Maybe they should hear about what happened to me so that it won't happen to them again as well. So we went, we did this webinar on his group, and there were like, I don't know, maybe I got like 40 messages after that.
Wow.
So I saw that there's, IP within Amazon is a real thing. And generally we saw that there were no attorneys in that area. So I started with the law firm, and the law firm grew. There we're a team of 16 people helping Amazon sellers and generally e-commerce sellers with the IP and suspensions. And then Fortunet in 2018, about 5.5 years ago, we saw that they were starting to exit. Sellers were starting to think about selling their brand, and Michal and I, who's my co-founder at Fortunet, we saw an opportunity there since there were no investment banks focused
Hmm.
on commerce. Still today, we're probably two or three who are really into the e-commerce field. And so we started there. Fast forward today, we're a team of 30 people doing just that, e-commerce transactions, mostly representing brands and software companies focused on e-com, also a few agencies. But really, e-com has always been our focus, at least in the last 8-9 years.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the background.
Very cool. I think that that's amazing. And I know, again, that was just kind of how you got started. And as you mentioned as well, kind of the way in which Fortinet was begun in 2018. Now, I think as well, Fortinet offers a lot of very unique services to sellers. So I would love if you wouldn't mind kind of explaining exactly what Fortinet does. And also, let's talk a little bit about what the seller journey and experience is, because I know people are coming to you at varied times when they're getting ready or when they're taking it under consideration to exit the business. So I'd love the full 360 of Fortinet in that journey.
Of course. So at Fortunet, it's an investment bank. We help sellers uh, through the exit journey. So from the moment they're thinking about an exit in, even in 2-3 years, until they actually the money is in the bank.
Yeah.
So if you look at the journey, we start the discussions sometimes 2 or 3 years before. They're thinking about how to increase their valuation. They're thinking about, are there any assets? Is there anything they need to expand to have a better exit? Are there preparations that they need to do before they exit? For example, are they, speaking of legal, do they have all the relevant trademarks? Are they would they pass a due diligence if it was tomorrow? Things like that to prepare. The main thing is to get the business in, to be ready in terms of the profit margins
Hmm.
of the growth. So buyers want a growing, profitable business, generally speaking, especially when you're referring to e-commerce businesses. And we get in to that journey either right before the sale or way before when they start preparing. So that's generally it in terms of the process of the sale itself. It starts with a preparation, us learning the business, and then preparing, thinking of the story together.
Hmm.
What would be attractive to buyers? How would a buyer grow the business? What are the opportunities for buyers? And there are different types of buyers, of course. So you adapt. So that would be the first stage, kind of the storytelling and analysis and understanding. We go through the numbers to make sure that everything is right and will pass a due diligence. And then you go to market. So you present the business to all the relevant buyers for that particular business, which can be strategic buyers, it can be private equity firms, and it can also be e-commerce operators.
Hmm.
But used to be aggregators. Today, those that are that are successful in the operation. So these are the typical buckets, mostly PEs and strategics, and sometimes with the e-commerce operators. So we go to market, and then of course we negotiate. We try to create a competitive process where you
Hmm.
sell your business, you want multiple offers. When you have multiple offers and you present it in the best possible way, then you couldn't get more for that business. So that's our job, to create that competition, to orchestrate this entire event, and hopefully get to the maximum price. And then you sign a term sheet, an LOI, and you go through the due diligence. So
Hmm.
there again, we hold the hand of our client through the entire legal part. We're not, on that side, we're not the attorneys, but we are very involved in every part of the due diligence until the deal is closed. So that's kind of the typical journey, starting before, and then really until the finish line, and very often even a year or two after, when they get the earnout or additional
Hmm.
payments, we are there again to work on that together.
Yeah, I think that that's so impressive, and it's so wild to me as well for many of these sellers, I think, who started with the idea of what they wanted to get going. It became a huge success, and then they reached that culmination point of, all right, I'm ready to sell, I'm ready to exit the business, and to know all the work that went into it, and then that they have a partner like Fortunet and the team on hand to be able to support them through that process is just incredible. And I think a huge value in terms of what you guys provide, and that partnership that you're offering sellers as well, as not to go at it alone. This can be done very strategically and with the appropriate help so that it's making the best sense for you and that your business is in the best light possible, to get the most optimal results.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And I think with that too, that reminds me, and knowing the hand holding that goes into it, the due diligence from your team and the time that you're investing in to cultivate that partnership with them. I think that also is kind of a reflection of where our partnership together comes in hand as well between Fortunet and Viably. We really like to be the trusted advisor for the sellers that we work with. And I think that's where there's such a great opportunity between our two organizations. And that's where, as well, Yael, I'd love if you can talk a little bit about kind of the partnership that we've struck up together, and how we're working to bring value and help sellers.
Yes, exactly. So first of all, on our side, there are many sellers that want to grow. want to sell the business when they get to a certain point, but to get there, they need the funds.
Hmm.
So for us, this is, this is obvious, an obvious collaboration with you, and I think this is where you could bring a lot of value to our clients. And it's really a stage that's needed in 80% of the cases. On the other side, exits and M&A in general is a lot about knowledge. So where we could help to educate and avoid problems, instead of coming at the last minute and trying to fix things that cannot be fixed anymore, where we can come in and help your clients, even just with a sometimes just one meeting or a phone call, can really set you for the next year or two. We're happy to help and have those initial discussions and bring value for us. This is the typical way to start a relationship.
Definitely. And I think, again, that's one of the things that I find to be such a strong asset of how we're partnering together is just that educational component. Again, there is so much that I think is innate to so many of the sellers that we work with in the ecosystem and in how they operate. But there's also so many unknown items or where to get started places. And that's where, again, we've loved partnering with Fortunet from that educational standpoint and really just helping sellers grow scalably, intelligently, and with the best educational arms possible under their belts.
Exactly.
And that's where too I was going to say, Yael, I also think as you're talking about the journey, and I know we've chatted previously before too about Fortunet's benchmark guide, and the importance of those benchmarks. I think it would be helpful if you can kind of give a breakdown of how these sellers can not only leverage your benchmark guide, but also what are important milestones that they should be thinking of when they maybe need to approach Fortunet and kind of take these things under consideration. So I'll let you kind of take and run with that as you will.
Yeah. So there are two tools that appear on our website and that I recommend every seller use. The first would be the benchmark guide, which tells you where you are compared to the general standards. So I mean the standard. This is a standard that we've developed, but this is based on really what we see from buyers. So what's considered a good tacos. These are questions that people ask us all the time. And when we start the process, we would usually look at all the metrics of your business and tell you, here you excel, this is great, but here you can really do better. I don't know, your cost of goods is extremely high to compare to others, etc. So this guide kind of gives you, and you can do your own evaluation and see where you stand. If you have 12% profit margins, is that good? Is that bad? Is that excellent? Where do you stand? So that's what we're trying to do in this guide. We have one for Amazon sellers. We're releasing now one for D2C sellers. And then we have a second tool, which we call the pre-due diligence or exit preparation tool. This is really for you to understand, would you pass a due diligence if it was tomorrow? And
Mhm.
then the tool really tells you, this is where you have problems. I don't know, you have you're violating the terms of service when it comes to inserts. You have some issues with trademarks. You should cover this part as well. So kind of a report that really tells you based on the questions what you should do to improve the business and make it ready for a sale, basically. So they're both free on our website, and I invite anyone to use them.
Yeah, and I think that that's really incredible as well. And I think often, I think when people consider investment banking, it's like, oh, well, I should be in this for a while. But I think Fortinet, again, offers so much to sellers at any point in their experience and in their growth to be a better seller. So, again, we love those educational resources. And I think a huge value in terms of what you guys offer, in addition to the slew of services that you have in your arsenal, too. Now, I also want to chat a little bit, kind of switching gears, Yael. I know your experience in the industry is vast, and I would love to hear. It's a little bit of a Pandora's box type question. But how has the industry really changed since you got started from especially like that initial call where you saw that there was an opportunity? Again, I'd love to hear some of the big evolutions that you've witnessed.
So in the M&A space, it's a roller coaster, right? I mean, if you look at e-commerce businesses, we had when we came in 2018. These were the first days of M&A in the Amazon and D2C space. There were already a few transactions in the D2C, but they weren't. The pace was different. And then came in the aggregators, and then we saw the rise of the M&As in that space. 2020, we saw, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 new buyers coming in. We buy Amazon businesses. So these aggregators have joined the industry. And 2021 was the peak of this type of buyers. Um, then, end of 2021, many of them didn't survive. We heard what happened to Thrasio, and there's a lot of conversations around why this happened and what can be improved, what others can do so that it won't happen. Many of them did survive and are actually successful, maybe with less articles about them, but very active when it comes to M&A. So we saw kind of this wave and then the after wave, and I think since the mid 2022, the market has become stable, a stable market, a
Mhm.
stable regular market. Most of the transactions we've done were mostly with private equity firms and strategics, less the aggregators. But we are seeing them coming back again. On our side, if I see the development, so while in the past there was also a market for the 5, 6, 7 million, or 2, 3, even $4 million businesses. These days, the active buyers are looking for larger businesses.
Mhm.
Private equities are not buying businesses of 3, 4 million. They're buying usually over, I would say, over 2, 3 million EBITDA. They would prefer even over 5 million EBITDA. So that's kind of the difference. So our daily life has changed and not changed, because they were always there. They were always a part of the process. But while back then, the e-commerce buyers were very rapid and buying everything at a very high pace. Now everything is going to the secure brand, the sure brand, the growing brand, and the strong ones. So that's kind of the change that we've seen. So it has seen a lot of ups and downs, but for the last 2 years, it's pretty stable. If we look at the last 4 or 5 months, we feel that the market is actually quite positive. So especially for e-commerce brands. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So, with that as well, and I think that's so helpful to hear again, kind of all of those fluctuations that you guys have witnessed. There's been a lot of changes for sellers. Kind of rounding out our discussion, what are, based on some of the trends that you were just talking about, what are some of the things that are coming out that you are most excited about for the sellers that you're working with, or positive trends that you've been hearing and seeing in the space that are getting you amped up?
Yeah, I think that e-commerce businesses have become kind of a mainstream investment or acquisition types of businesses. So I don't know if you call it exciting, but I think that if you compare it to the past, where we really had to kind of prove that these businesses are strong, legitimate, have a future. These days, it's just like any type of business. We feel that, of course, our knowledge in the space help us um, show the advantages of such a business and what buyers could do with it. The combination a buyer that hasn't been strong on e-commerce with a strong e-commerce seller is really a success, and we see that now again and again. So this is now something that we can show, and we see that trend of a combination, an aggregator that we're selling now, combining with a more traditional buyer, and they together they can take on their brands to e-commerce and vice versa. These are changes that we see, and that I'm excited about.
That's very clear, and I think that is something that all sellers should keep top of mind, kind of with those changes too. And then the last thing that I'd love to hear from you as we kind of wrap up our session, though I know we could go for much longer, is what kind of words of advice would you dispense? I know that you've had a lot to share, but as a seller is potentially considering the promise of working with an investment banker, just as you mentioned, maybe it's a couple of years out, what are some things that they should be do to help getting their business in a good spot now, before maybe they chat with you or they're considering talking with you? What pieces of advice would you have for a seller that's kind of questioning where they stand and what to do next?
Yeah, so I think I would start with education. Most sellers do that. They start having discussions. Sometimes a buyer, kind of knocks on their door. They go on these conversations just to understand how the market feels like. Have these calls with bankers. It also helps understanding the comparables. Most bankers would show you, where you stand, what are the multiples in your categories, which transactions have been done recently in your category. I think it really helps you being a better, having a better business, managing your
Mhm.
your business better. You will also be prepared for when the time comes. Sometimes we're having early conversations even with buyers, telling them, this business is not for sale now. It's going to be probably on the in the market about a year from now, and then they start following this business. They start reaching out to us every once in a while, and when you're out there, they're really ready for that
Yeah.
acquisition. So my general advice would be educate yourself, and start those discussions. I haven't seen a place where this was a negative. um, in most cases, it helps you being prepared, and use these tools that I mentioned earlier, the exit prep tool, the benchmark tool, to understand if you're ready and if there are things that you could do to improve the business itself.
Yeah, I think that that's incredibly sage advice. Be educated, start preparation for whatever that path might look like in advance so that you are fully prepared and also that your business is firing as optimally as possible. Yael, we again could have chatted for much longer, but I'm so thrilled and appreciative that you took the time to sit down and speak with me. As always, it was just lovely chatting with you and learning so much more about this. And I think that all of our listeners will also find this to be so helpful. So thank you again so
Thank,
much for your time.
thank you. Likewise, it was always fun speaking with you.
Yeah. And if you guys do have any questions, we will have links included in the description, so you can learn more about Fortunet and how they might be able to help you be prepared for the future. But